On to the next webinar then. Data continues to play a key role in every aspect of a charity. From running the organisation to engaging with employees and running campaigns, data does really underpin every decision made. Up next, we have Sian Basker, who's the co-CEO of Data Orchard, with a sort of nonsense-free session on how to become a more data-savvy leader. She'll be covering the journey you can take towards data maturity, the key factors for success, and what good and great look like. And moreover, how to get started, and how to get started now. So enough of me, over to Sian.
Hello, thank you for coming to join my session on how to become a data savvy leader. I'm going to cover 3 things today. I'm going to talk about how organisations can be better or worse at data. I'm going to talk about why getting better can be challenging but worth it. And I'm going to talk about what tools and support are available to help your organisation to improve. So to start off with, I think it would be helpful if I explain what I mean by data. So I'm talking about all the kinds of information your organisation collects, stores, analyses and uses. And it can be in many forms. So it can include words, it can include numbers, it can include images, maps, a whole plethora. Now, when you think about data in that kind of holistic context, you might find it quite daunting. And to some extent, why would you want to go there and exploring it in your organisation? But there are some really big and important reasons why data has become such a big deal in our sector. I don't doubt for a moment that many of you will have heard the term big data. It was a real buzz term in 2010, and it was really the result of a huge explosion of data resulting from all of the digital tools that had been gathering and exploding data and that from before that. And there are really 3 big V's that go with big data. V for volume, as in there's been more data than ever before and it's constantly being generated. And in your organisation, every team and project and activity will be generating plenty of data. The second V is about variety. So all of your documents, your spreadsheets, your emails, the tweets, the photos, surveys, websites, mailing lists, all your databases, CRMs, all of them hold a really broad variety of data. And the third V is about velocity. And that means it's just coming at you all the time, so faster than ever. So the times when it used to be three-year survey to get some kind of steer, now people are getting data constantly in real time sometimes about what's going on in their organisation. The image in this slide comes from the Big Bang Data exhibition a few years ago in London. And in fact, it was streaming data from a satellite live into a room. And it was on every wall, just changing constantly. And it was really appalling. It made you feel sick being in that room. So that really brings me to my second point about why data is such a big deal, because there have been tremendous advances in analytics and some amazing new tools and techniques have become available in the last decade that enable us to explore problems and solutions, that enable us to join data up with other data, and crucially, they enable us to present and visualize data in much more useful and meaningful ways. So it's never been so possible as it is now to both see the big picture and explore fine detail, to discover new patterns and insights, and to understand change in connectivity. Some other key reasons why data is such a big deal is about openness. So our government is one of the leading governments in the world in publishing open data sets. And indeed, quite a lot of universities are also doing so. Even charities as well are publishing their own data. So this presents a really great shared resource about our society and the context that we're working in. And it's also offering up new opportunities for sharing data, so new partnerships. A really good example of this is 360 Giving. So they are pulling together shared data from grant makers in the public sector and trusts and foundations, and the government as well, indeed. So it's really pulling together a whole new perspectives on grant giving and ultimately leads to really good collaboration about how to act on that data and how that can influence policy and action. My last key point about why data is such a big deal is about responsibility. The charity sector probably works with some of the most vulnerable and disadvantaged people and communities. And so as a result of that, it tends to collect quite a lot of sensitive personal data. And that means that we have a real responsibility around security and protection of that data and privacy of our beneficiaries. So, putting all that together, I'm imagining quite a lot of people are thinking, data, it's quite complicated, possibly a bit scary. Where do I start with it? Well, don't worry, because today's session, I'm going to introduce some charities and some leaders that have been on that journey. I'm going to start with Katie Eastaugh at the Cart Shed. So the Cart Shed is a charity based in the West Midlands. They work with people who are really struggling to cope with life. They support adults, both unemployed people and people who are struggling to stay in employment because of their health. They work with veterans and families of people in the military, and they work with children and young people. And what they do is they work out in the woodlands and out in nature, as you can see from some of these pictures. And they teach creative woodland skills and horticultural skills. They grow all kinds of amazing food, as you can see there, and then they cook much of that food out in the woods as well. They create a friendly social setting for people, and they then provide huge amounts of personal and group therapeutic support, mostly using occupational therapy techniques. And ultimately, they're all about enabling people to manage their own mental health and physical well-being in a sustainable way. Now, in 2018, when I asked Katie, well, give me a few words to tell me how you feel about data, she said, I hate it. And I did note that they were not a particularly data mature organisation, but she had some very good reasons why she hated data. And these are some of them. She was frustrated. She told me she was frustrated with growing numbers of unwieldy spreadsheets. She said she was really struggling with really old and unreliable digital tools and systems. She said for all of their data, they weren't able to extract anything reliable or meaningful in terms of analysis for decision making. And that was despite investing huge amounts of staff time and beneficiary time in capturing data. She was also unconfident about their data protection and security policies. And given this was 2018, the year of GDPR, it was obviously quite important. But ultimately, her biggest problem was about being unclear about the impact they were having and just saying they just completely lacked the knowledge and skills to measure it. So I'm going to just move on and introduce a second charity now. I'll come back to the Cart Shed later on. I'd like to talk about The Key. So this is Hannah Underwood from The Key. She's the chief executive there. They've been working since 2008 to create a programme for young people that helps them think up, plan, do and review their own projects. And this programme of work is all about building key skills. They have like 12 key skills that the young people learn, which are foundations for their lives. And you can see some examples of the kinds of projects young people have been doing there, ranging from Zumba to canoeing to selling at festivals and even a spaceship launch, I believe. Their organisation is really data mature. In the last 5 years, they've supported about 10,000 young people and worked with over 120 partners in the North East. And when I asked Hannah about a few words to describe how she feels about data, she was very clear that for them, data has always been about improving, not just proving. So what do they do that so makes them such a data mature organisation? Well, Firstly, data is at the core of everything they do. They use data to experiment and design their program so that they can deliver optimal outcomes for the young people. So they're measuring what they do, what difference it makes, how long it takes to make those changes, for whom. They absolutely understand how they reach young people and how they can grow their partnerships with young people and with other partner organisations. And in particular, they use it around evidencing and improving their impact. And they're really guided by some quite clear principles. And one of their key principles is that they get value from all of the data that they collect. So the Key and the Curtinshed are both charities similar size. They've got less than a dozen staff, I think. They're both quite small in terms of numbers, probably similar size in turnover. Both of those organisations have been really helpful to us in helping us to understand what good and what great looks like. And they've helped us to really spot some of the key indicators for success. And as a result of working with them, we have created a framework to explain data maturity. Now, we've been working for 5 years now on researching this concept of data maturity in organisations. We've worked with hundreds of charities and social enterprises. We've done national surveys, we've done in-depth interviews with groups of staff, we've done focus groups, we've tested long-term progress on support interventions. And what we've been really trying to do is seeking to understand how organisations get better with data. What are the important factors for success? What okay, good, great looks like? And so this is the result of that work. This is a really simple framework that explains it. So we have a 5-stage journey from unaware, emerging, learning, developing, and mastering. And those are the 5 stages for each of these 7 key themes. So when you look at the 7 key themes, you can see some things that are quite tangible. The data itself, obviously, quite tangible. The tools you use, quite tangible. A lot of it's about people. So the leadership, the culture, and the skills are all about the people. And then finally, it's also about vision and purpose. So how you're using and applying data in your organisation, what questions you ask and how you analyse it, and also how you act on the data to reap the rewards from it. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on a couple of these themes. When we were researching data maturity, it wasn't for us just about creating a theoretical concept. We really wanted to understand how you can measure data maturity. What are the important questions you should be asking? Can you compare one organisation with another organisation? Could you measure even how the whole sector is doing? And indeed, ultimately, can the assessment process help organisations to improve? So for each of the 7 themes, there are these sub-themes. I'll talk through a couple of them. So for example, in data, the sub-themes in there are about the collection, the quality, the sources, the assets. So by that I mean how you manage and nurture your key data assets in the organisation. And in fact, one of my favourite questions in our assessment is, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the statement, we know the quality of our data? It's a surprisingly tricky question. It generates a huge amount of discussion, I find, in organisations. I really, really value the start of conversations around that. The other theme I wanted to talk about briefly was leadership, since we're here on the subject of leadership. For leadership, the sub-themes are attitude, plans, capability, and investment. And I suppose one of my favourite questions in there is really about the attitude, because it makes a huge difference. It can range from leaders who have no interest in data whatsoever, or some that are kind of vaguely aware that it can be used, but they don't really see the value of it. And it ranges through to others more advanced who are really engaged and supportive and ask the right questions of the data. And ultimately, in the most mature organisations that are really mastering it, those leaders really understand how to use data to improve, and they prioritise and plan data as a really vital resource for the organisation. So, how did the curtinshed and the key measure up in our assessment? In answer to the question, can you measure and compare different organisations? Then the answer is yes. 2 years ago, all of the staff at the curtinshed and at the key undertook an online assessment to answer our assessment questions about data maturity. And we've presented the results here on what are called radar charts. Now, let me explain these radar charts. They're not naturally intuitive for everybody. So a radar chart, in this case, because we have 7 key themes, it is in the shape of a heptagon. You did have to look that up. It's 7-sided shape, basically. And each of the scores for the 5 stages range from a 0 to a 5. So this middle heptagon here is a very non-data mature, unaware organisation. And then it goes through the stages to the 5 stages up to mastery. So the outer heptagon is an organisation reaching mastery. The scores showed that the curtinshed was kind of at the early stages. Between 2 and 3 is the learning stage, and they were at the early stages of learning. And you can see by the shape, what happens is you plot the scores on each of the dimensions of the 7 themes around the edges on a scale of 0 to 5. And you can see that there's basically the smaller the shape when you join it up and closer to the middle, the least mature it is. Whereas on the right-hand side with the key, you can see in the orange, it's a much bigger and closer to the edge shape. So comparing their results, I would say it's quite obvious that the 2 organisations are at different stages of maturity, but even within that, they have strengths and weaknesses. So you can see where it's not a uniform shape. In the case of the key, they're really strong on uses and really strong on leadership. Indeed, actually, even on the curtinshed, they're also quite strong on leadership, but they're definitely very poor when it comes to skills and tools, for example. Now, when we looked at data maturity across the whole sector, I would say it varies quite a lot in terms of the data maturity of the whole sector. Very few are in the mastering stage. Quite a lot are in the early stages of learning, even unaware. I would like to do a little bit of myth busting in that we've seen, in looking at hundreds of organisations, we've seen no evidence that bigger organisations are doing better than small organisations. We've seen no evidence that urban organisations are doing better than rural, or that older, more established organisations are doing better than younger ones. So we'll keep watching that space, but on the whole, most organisations are not that data mature. So that feels a really good time to talk to you about some help and support that's available. Now, Data Orchard is part of a whole network of organisations around the country, indeed around the world, who are interested in supporting the not-for-profit sector with data. We are in the UK part of a national network, the Data for Good network, and partnership, along with Charity Digital, who have kindly organised today's conference. We have compiled a list of data support providers, which you can find on our website. Some of these organisations on that list offer free and pro bono support. They're all very experienced at working in and with charities. And many of them, like Data Orchard, are themselves part of the not-for-profit sector. So there's a real understanding of the context of the charity sector. The other important bit of support I wanted to tell you about was that we have now made our data maturity assessment tool available online, and we launched it last October. It asks a series of questions around those 7 data maturity things. It takes about 20 minutes, or if you're very short of time, there's a quick 5-minute taster. And it's free. So I'm going to give you an example of a report that you would get from a data maturity assessment now. And I'm just going to talk you through what you see. So basically, as soon as you've completed your assessment, you would get an instant report that would look like this. And it would tell you overall what stage your organisation is at and what your overall score was. Obviously, this organisation wasn't doing very well. So they only scored 2.1 out of 5. But on the positive side, they were strongest in leadership, tools and analysis. So here, you'll be very pleased to know we dropped the radar chart and went for a bar chart. So the bar chart will give you a score and show how you're doing in those 17 areas. And it will also pick out for you the themes that you should probably focus on. So it helps you to prioritise where you're going to look. I should point out also about benchmarking. So there you will notice there are a series of dotted lines on the chart. And these give the average for all of the respondents in the data maturity assessment. And in fact, you can check by hovering over the benchmark word. It will give a little pop-up as shown on this screen. It says around 200 organisations have used it between October and June. And then for each of the themes, you have an opportunity to delve in further, and that will give you further information and instructions about your next steps for each theme. So you might be wondering who should take the assessment. That's a very good question. Data means different things to different people. And nobody knows everything there is to know about data in an organisation. And typically, the answers to data maturity questions are in many people's heads, and often they might not agree with each other or with you. So to get the best out of the tool, it really requires multiple people to take the assessment, ideally everyone, to get a full picture. Now, if you're a small organisation, then the free tool is ideal. If you can get a group of you together to take the assessment collectively, it's a really great idea. We do have more sophisticated and very reasonably priced other options for larger organisations and those that are really serious about becoming data savvy. But in the meantime, do you make use of the free tool? At least include someone in a leadership position and somebody who's in the most data related role. And I would encourage you to get as many perspectives as possible. And I'd like to show you some interesting findings from our early research. So what we're looking at here is some very early findings. We did some analysis after less than 2 months of having the tool live, just to see how it was going and who was using it. And what we found is that in most charities, very few organisations actually have a dedicated role. It's more common, obviously, in very large charities. Some of them have got entire analytics departments. And certainly over the last decade, there have been more dedicated data roles, often in this field of impact and evaluation and research. But sometimes we're seeing data strategists and data managers involved, or analysts. But in truth, even when you do have a dedicated team, data is part of everybody's jobs. So we asked people what kind of roles they were in and how much of their job was about working with data. And as you can see, everybody's job is very substantially, I mean, even in the lowest one, which is about 25% of people working in HR, they're saying 25% of their job is about working with data. When we asked the cart shed about how much time they spent on data, it ranged from about 5% to 85%. On average, it was 43% of people's time was spent on data. Now, given that salaries are often the biggest expense in non-profit organisations. That's a huge amount of resource being spent on data. And it's especially frustrating if you're not actually reaping the fruits of all of that effort as well as you could. So my conclusion from all of this is getting data savvy is a team effort. So I'm going to come back to our two organisations and talk about what's happened since 2018. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the cart shed. Now, the cart shed embarked on a journey based on those three priorities, which were data, skills, and tools. In the realm of data, they were really focused on getting the right data. And they did a lot of work on their theory of change. They did a lot of work streamlining and cleaning and sorting their processes and improving their data collection so that what they were collecting was useful and relevant. In terms of skills and knowledge, this is what I mean by a team effort. You can see from some of these pictures, they involved everyone. I mean, I think there's even the dog in the bottom picture on the left. But they had all of their staff, all of their trustees, they had volunteers involved. Sometimes it also involved participants as well. And all of them were really engaged in a dialogue and there were some tough discussions about data and impact and what they needed to do. There was also a lot of new learning around new tools and concepts. There were new job responsibilities that people took on within their jobs. And they took on new policies, developed new policies around digital technology, confidentiality, data protection. In the realm of tools, it was a complete transformation. They totally transformed their digital infrastructure. They got new computers, new software, there was new virus protection and security, broadband got upgraded. They migrated over 30,000 files onto the cloud and had a proper cleanup of their document management and file management system. They got some external support and they've started work on a CRM system. So in all, they had a very busy year. In the bottom right of the screen, you will see our data maturity assessment. So we reassessed them a year after they'd been doing all this work. And although they had focused primarily on the tools and the skills and the data, they had in fact improved in all of those areas. And when I talked to them about how it had impacted their organisation, all of this effort, they said it had really, the key things that it had really helped them improve were their services. So they were much better able, beneficiaries with a much clearer understanding of who they can and can't serve well. It absolutely transformed their understanding about impact. And it's a shared understanding. I think this is the thing about involving everybody. So they really understand the impact they're trying to have and the data they need to collect and analyse in order to measure that. Now, Katie, who hates data, has said to me that she finds the theory of change really helpful. She's using that to have new kinds of conversations with commissioners. She told me recently she was talking confidently about data protection and the lawful basis in data sharing discussions around partners who support veterans. And she's also just successfully applied to be on the CLAW Social Leadership Foundation programme. So they are continuing to move forward and thrive, and it's really exciting. We're due to reassess them again this year, and we look forward to doing that when it's a good time. Now, the key. Now, you might be wondering what happened with Hannah Underwood and the key and what she did next. The thing about being a data mature organisation is that you never stop improving and never stop investing. So Hannah was telling me that since 2018, they've really focused on understanding and extending their reach, and they've been exploring using data, new thematic and geographic markets. They've been looking more into understanding and improving their impact. So they've been looking at whether they can use externally validated measures of resilience and growth mindset. And they're really looking at a richer understanding of their progression outcomes and the demographics of young people, and for whom it works really well and for whom it doesn't. I spoke to Hannah a few weeks ago, and she told me that they had developed a proposal based on lots of data. So they've done lots of mapping around the country to find areas with similar populations and profiles to the one they serve in the North East. And on the basis of that, she had developed a proposal to scale up and roll out their programme nationally. And she invited a group of funders to collectively fund this endeavour. So far, she's had 8 sign up. She's secured £1.2 million so far. And those 8 partners have agreed that she only has to do 1 report to all of them, and consistently just share that with all of them rather than having to report in 8 different directions. I would say Hannah is probably one of the most inspirational charity leaders, and is fantastically data savvy, even though she will tell you herself she's not really a data person. But I would encourage you to look at her TED Talk. She did a great TED Talk at TEDx Newcastle, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. So, reaching the wrap up of this presentation, I hope this presentation has shown how organisations can be better or worse when it comes to data. That it is challenging and time-consuming and sometimes a bit scary. You're definitely going to need to invest time and money if you're going to get better. But it is worth it because it's empowering. We've seen how for Katie and the Cart Shed, the benefits and rewards for them were about better design and delivery of their services. They had more knowledgeable and purposeful and focused staff, much greater efficiency because of their tools and their fruitful staff time and skills. And as a result of that, they've been able to do much better planning and evidence-based decision making. For Hannah, I'd say, even at sort of moving into the realms of mastery with data, the benefits are increased credibility and influence, much stronger partnerships and networks. She's been able to generate income and improve their outcomes and improve their impact as an organisation. So I think also, just to sort of wrap up, there are tools and support available to help your organisation with data. I mentioned earlier we've got a whole list of data support providers on our website. Do feel free to get in touch with us at Data Orchard. These are my contact details on the screen. And I'd just like to close with my top tip for becoming data savvy, which is please use our data maturity tool. It's free. Use it with people in your organisation to start talking about and thinking about data in your organisation. So that's the end of my pre-recorded presentation, and I believe now we're going to move on to questions.
We are indeed. Thank you very much, Jan. That was great. Great little digestible presentation there to get the hunger for data. Really appreciate it. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very good. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we've got you loud and clear. You're staying cool?
Oh, it's very hot. It's absolutely frying here. I'm impressed so many people are with us now that we're moving into the hottest bit of the day.
I know, right? And we do thank everybody very much for that. I know the temptation is real with the sun baking down outside to go out and enjoy it. But we've got some questions for you, Sean.
Okay.
Let's dig in. So the first one from Hendy Irawan. What do you think about blockchain technology? Are you aware of organisations using blockchain to manage stored data? And especially to collaborate or share data between organisations out to the public? Nice, difficult one to start
Hendy,
with.
that's like right in the deep end. Thank you very much for your question. I have to say, I confess blockchain is not my area of expertise at all. I did go to a conference called Data on Purpose at Stanford University a couple of years ago, where somebody gave a presentation about blockchain. I felt like even even with a degree in maths and a master's in data science, I couldn't understand anything they said at all about it. But I believe there are advances. I mean, it's obviously on the board out there. I think it's at the more advanced end of data maturity for sure. I think there are some. I've seen that there's an ethical design framework for blockchain technology. And I have heard of some projects that are exploring it, actually, particularly in Africa, around different sort of trade and currency setups. But I confess it's not my area of expertise, so I'm sorry I can't help you very much with that. But I'll look some things up, and perhaps I can put them to the team to share afterwards.
Absolutely, yeah, we can do that on your behalf. We've also got a couple of articles on blockchain as well, Hendy, that we can fire your way as well. Another question. So, you know, we've been talking about data for such a long time now. Yeah, it's still got a bit of a slow adoption. Is there a sense that, you know, charities think data is just not that important to them?
I think there are. I think it's probably true that some charities think data isn't that important to them. Obviously, I would disagree enormously. I mean, I think even at the very basic level, you would need to. Sorry, can you hear better? I think even at a very basic level, you need some data, even to report to regulators like the Charity Commission. And to your board, for example, on basic level stuff. But I think in this day and age, in a modern organization, things are changing so fast, like internally within your organization, externally in the sort of social and environmental context that we live and work in, and therefore for your beneficiaries, whomever they are or whatever your social cause is, things are changing all the time. And very few organizations really work in real isolation. So there's much more connectivity between organizations and partnerships. And so we kind of generally operate within an ecology with other organizations, which is why, you know, what you mentioned just there about data sharing is one of the most exciting areas, I think, where organizations are starting to work together and share their data and look at how they can improve their data sharing, to understand that bigger picture and how it's changing and how their organization can make a difference in this world individually and collectively.
Absolutely. I think that partnership collaboration angle has been a big sort of spine throughout the day, and, you know, organizations like yourself and DataKind are doing amazing things with all manner of organizations and manner of sizes, shapes and forms.
I really admire organizations that step into that realm of data sharing, because it can be a bit like getting your dirty laundry out. It can be a bit embarrassing. Everyone's got dirty data. Like terribly phrased questions, and like half of it's missing, and it's all really out of date, and you know, it's a messy business. So to get your dirty laundry out together and go, okay, what can we muster from this, and how can we make it better? And I think that's really exciting. And you know, there are whole subsectors of the sector that have been doing data sharing, you know, or doing shared measurement, shared benchmarking around different areas. That's really exciting.
I absolutely love that. Everyone's got dirty data. I feel like that needs to be on a t-shirt. But it's true what you're saying. It essentially is true, and it's about having those conversations, right, and start to make right instead of just ignoring it. It'll only get dirtier and dirtier, essentially.
It does.
So it's really important. I saw you'd answered Colette's question, but I just wanted to bring that out to the group as well. You know, what are the good ways for relatively inexperienced leaders to learn more about data and data management? Obviously, we have your data maturity tool that you mentioned quite a bit. Are there any others as well that you'd recommend?
There's a whole range of stuff. We are part of a global network with Stanford University's Digital Impact Program, and they've collected a whole lot of resources that combine. It's a very interesting kind of interrelationship between digital and data. I have arguments with digital kind of colleagues who say which one came first. It's very chicken and egg, really. So Digital Impact have got some fantastic resources, you know, little wizards that you can check your policies, you know, you can check your thinking, you can learn things. There's also internationally, there's a great network that are really concerned a lot, and quite rightly, with responsible data. So there's also a responsible data framework that people can look at. And I'll put these resources online. In fact, if you go to our website and look at help and support, all of these are listed on there. And, there are different flavors of expertise. Some people absolutely specialize in data visualization, some specialize in analyzing text and sentiment analysis and all that. So yeah, there are lots out there, and please add yourselves to it if you're looking to provide support around data.
Absolutely. And what about free courses? Do you know of any free courses or good courses that are out there that people can use from a personal development point of view?
That's interesting. It's a little bit of a passion of mine, actually. For example, I was when I was looking to find a master's degree, I looked at like all of the universities thinking, well, surely there's something out there. There are very few actually at kind of master's degree level that would be great for the non-profit sector. Although both myself and Giselle Corey from DataKind UK went to Cardiff, which has probably one of them, I suppose, because they have good links with the Office for National Statistics in Newport in Wales, and they have quite a lot of public sector interest. So it seemed like an area that had got quite good sort of public social good thinking, whereas a lot are much more kind of commercially and finance orientated. But kind of outside that, if you're not wanting to take on a master's degree, and it's not for everyone, although I am campaigning to get more places for charity people. It's one of my little flag carrying, championing things, to try and get some courses, or at least some modules on courses that are about kind of the non-profit sector and data for good. There are lots and lots of tools for learning coding and online courses and all that sort of thing. And some of them are, are quite accessible and beginner level. And again, we're collaborating with some other partners to see if we can get some kind of more statsy courses, like in, for example, R, which is a free online tool that you can use, but actually to kind of contextualize it. We've done some courses at Data Orchard. We've been developing some courses both offline and starting to test them online, and just kind of getting more fun around data, sort of trying to get people more comfortable. A lot of people are absolutely horrified by data and maths and numbers. And I mean, to be fair, there are some very bad data visualizations out there that do nothing to help improve people's confidence. So there's some data playbook things and some data culture, we just get people making things with pipe cleaners and Lego and, just kind of physically exploring data.
Great. Well, you'll have to
keep one in the future with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to keep us posted how that lobbying goes for sure. Well,
I will.
We'll definitely need to pick that up offline, I think.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. So to bring it back to the essence of today in digital leadership, if a leader, as we hope plenty of leaders are watching this and want to get a better idea of data, what are the first three things you tell them to do?
I think the first thing I would ask them is to ask themselves, is data working for my cause? Is it operating as an asset and as a resource that is really driving our cause? I would recommend they take 5 minutes to do our 5-minute taster on our data maturity assessment tool. We've designed that especially for people who are a little bit cautious and don't have much time, which is most leaders. And I think also the third thing I would say, which is really important, is to work out who else internally and externally has an interest and skills and knowledge that can help drive your organization forward, and start talking to them about it.
Absolutely. That's another key theme that's kind of come off today, I feel, is talk. Like, people just need to open up and start having these conversations with the right people. It is so incredibly important. We've heard from Cast earlier, all about partnerships and communication, and that's echoed throughout a lot of the conversation. Certainly on this stream, what I've been picking up is, fact number one, let's go out and start talking to people, and days like this and plenty others that go on within the sector are really important for doing that. So that's great. In terms of keeping on that theme then, in terms of being able to get your board, your manager, whoever on board with data and get them excited about data, how could you go about doing that?
Well, boards are an interesting area. I mean, I think diversity is really important. I mean, in all different dimensions, and partly it's about the makeup of the people and how representative they are of the population and of your beneficiary groups in terms of their kind of experience and expertise. But it's also about bringing together different areas of knowledge and expertise. And I think in the past, traditionally, it's been very common to have somebody who's an accountant in there, somebody who knows something about finance, and often it's about looking for people who might have legal expertise, if that's relevant to the organisation. But I think increasingly, having people who have got data and analytics expertise is a real asset. But in a way, it's not just about individuals, it's about everybody. And maybe that's something we could look at, is trying to develop some kind of modules or courses for boards that sort of, take away from the fear about it all being very technical and analytical, but really their role as a governing part of the organization is to to be open and to challenge and to scrutinize what's going on. So there's a sort of monitoring role, but really their job is to ask the right questions. And I think once you've sort of moved on from the kind of operational questions about how the organisation is doing its health and in terms of its staff and its financial situation and what its activity is really looking to the future of like, where are they going? And I think once their questions start to move much more into how data can inform their decisions about how to change and improve and grow in the future, then I think that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, great. No, that's very powerful. Thank you for that. A bit more of a practical question from Adam now. Do you have any ideas of encouraging breaking down data silos within an organisation? For example, this is my data, not your data, to help bring data together on an organisation-wide basis.
Yeah, I think this is a real challenge, but I feel like this, I mean, it comes back to my point about harnessing the internal expertise. So sometimes you have, particularly in larger organizations where there are much more sort of distinguishable departmental roles and responsibilities. So you might have a whole team that's working on fundraising and a separate whole team that does, frontline service delivery, and another team that's doing, marketing and web comms, with varying levels of discussion between them. And in some of the most exciting and advanced organizations start bringing those people together, because there are so many similarities in what you can do or what you might do, and so much opportunity to learn internally. So when we use our data maturity tool with large organizations, you can also kind of internally benchmark, so you can see the parts of the organization that are doing really well and the parts that are doing really badly. And so it's an opportunity to start those conversations between the two. Like, what if you were to swap roles and situate yourself in each other's department or role in the organization? What would you do differently? What would you learn? And I think it's also, one of the things that's been a real frustration, I think, in many organizations is that the sort of industry of databases and the CRM system has been very dominated by the funding and membership kind of type of world, and not really been as focused on beneficiaries and beneficiary data. So there's much more focused around donors and all of those other services, and not really focused on the actual service delivery or the engagement with beneficiaries. And so often those staff are using completely different systems and tools, and this is often how the sort of silos start to begin. And so I think that my ultimate thing is bring those people together, get HR in, get the IT people in, get the comms people in, get all of the heads of the service deliveries, get frontline people. I mean, this is the interesting thing between whose job it is making the decisions on the data versus who's on the front line collecting the data and filling in forms with beneficiaries and participants. Yeah. So get them all together.
But it's very much part of your digital culture by the sounds of it, isn't it? And integrating it at that level to then have it spill through the rest of your organisation, to have it centralized essentially and have everybody singing from the same hymn sheet, for lack of a better phrase. Great. So I've got one more question before I'll let you go, and we have an interesting panel coming up. Emma Smith put a great little ditty in the chat that I really quite enjoyed, that she didn't used to like data, but it was only because, you know, she didn't understand and how valuable it could be, but now she's a massive data geek, and I think that's a really important sense. And what I want to put over to you, and I can add a little flavour to this, is what was it? How do you become that data geek? How can you get excited about data?
I think people get excited about data when it relates to their context and their job and their work. And I mean, one of the most exciting things is the giving the data back to the people. Like, it's sort of, some people feel like it's a one-way street. Like, they collect all this data, they give it to someone else, they turn it into a report, it goes to a funder or a commissioner, they never see it again. Some organizations put all of their data on another commissioner's database. They don't get anything back whatsoever. And one of the things I find most exciting is now it's coming back. Like, I gave you all my data, so what does it say, and how can it help me in my role? And in fact, you know, in some of the most exciting ones, it goes back to the beneficiary. This is your data because you're the beneficiary here. So, like, how is this data helping understand the needs of beneficiaries and how they're changing and how they're progressing? And I think actually, once you get to have some control over that data, over defining what questions you want to ask of it and what's helpful for you in your job and what's helpful for you to inform internally and externally, I think that's when people get most excited. And,
absolutely. That's exactly the contextualization is what made me getting excited in data, for essentially, like, even looking at a day like today, like, you look at the signups, and then beyond that you're looking at where the people are coming from. You go deeper into that on the day, you read the comments, and you get the feel and the buzz for what people are experiencing. That all helps us create the next event, right? And we take that forward and action that in certain ways. So it's putting it exactly what you said. It's putting that in specific perspective that pertains to you and your organization. Look, I think we could talk all day about this.
I'm sure we could.
But we have an amazing panel coming up next, so I'm going to let you go and get out and enjoy the
lovely
sunshine.
To speak to you. Thank you everybody for joining and for answering your questions. I shall follow up Julie.
Thank you very much, Jan.
Okay, thank
Pleasure
you.
to have you.
Bye.
Bye.